Did you guys know they made that America was so good, they made a second America, except they made it a little hastily and accidentally made them really conceited and sort of just sort of gay? It's Canada. The death debate. Why some welcome Canada's move to assisted dying for medical illness and others feel it. We're getting real with this segment, lads. All right? We're dusting this subject with as much comedy as we can muster. Listen, I gotta... Okay, here's the gist of it, all right? On March 17th, 2023, Canada's MAID law will change, allowing people whose sole underlying medical condition is mental illness to be eligible for an assisted death. So basically, you just all you need a little smidge of the tism, okay? Now I'll talk about this more. There's some like unreliable reporting on this particular issue, you know, and that I want to cover. However, I do think it's worth pointing out that many of you have made Twitter posts saying that you want to die having the ass of a maid smother you to death. So in a way, this isn't that far off from what you've said before, right? Yeah. I would probably play some music and I would die peacefully. He being in this case John Scully, an 81-year-old retired journalist. He told CTV's W5, I don't want to botch it again. I screwed up twice trying to kill myself. He said he's clear-minded and competent. The evidence is in 3 books he's written, including Am I Dead Yet? A Journalist's Perspective on Terrorism. He's already started the paperwork for his procedure and has the blessing of his 2 children and his wife of 57 years, Tony. All right. So obviously reading through this extensively is just going to be really depressing. So I want to talk with you guys about ethical rights, okay? Now, obviously this is one of those philosophy issues, so there's not really any like hard like objective yes/no answers on this, okay? However, ethically speaking, I do think people have the right to die. However, I also feel like people should be discouraged from exercising that right to the greatest possible extent. You know what I mean? 99.9999 whatever percent of the time, if someone wants to die, this is something they can be bonked out of, you know? Sometimes bonking means, you know, medication. Sometimes bonking means the care and love of friends. Sometimes bonking means that they need to get off or on different drugs or whatever they're on, you know? Some kind of bonking, right? You know? It's like one of those, you know, you hear those stories about how somebody jumps off a bridge to kill themselves, but they end up surviving, and every single one of them, they're like, yeah, the moment I jumped off, I regretted it, you know? Like, you've heard that, right? Like, all the time, it's like, oh yeah, the nanosecond I no longer had the ability to sort of impulsively bring this outcome about. I actually didn't want to die anymore, yeah, I want to live. So, again, it's like, it's very much like a, you know, well, you have the right, but I have the right to, like, stop you as much as possible, kind of thing, you know? I want to be careful with this, because there are probably there are definitely some people in chat who have personally attempted suicide, or at least thought about it, and I want to, like, listen, living is difficult. Throughout an entire person's life, basically everyone is going to have some point in their life where if they had a gun on them right then, they would at least think of shooting themselves. This is because our brain is, purely medical jargon here, fucking retarded. See, a lot of people are under the delusory belief that we have this, like, pure, sort of, like, unfiltered perception of the world around us, you know? This is something I believed until I realized I had bipolar depression, okay? We're like, ah, yeah, I am simply a rational observer of the world. If my emotions are telling me that there's no point in living, those emotions must be right. I am reconciling this factual information, you know? This is not how it works. In reality, you know, your brain is stupid. Somebody could just throw some goddamn sad juice in there, and then you could just be sad and want to die. But you can get the juice out, you know? It makes as much sense as if, like, you spilled some food on your countertop, and then you touch your countertop and it's sticky, and you're like, I hate countertops because they're sticky. This countertop was always sticky. It's sticky now, and I'll die with it still being sticky. I hate sticky countertops. And then you never want to use that countertop again. The problem is, when you're in your own head, there's this, like, impermeability to the analytical process, you know? You can't use a broken machine to self-diagnose a broken machine. So a brain that is currently afflicted with some kind of, they're feeling depressive or anxious, isn't that, like, it's not good at realizing that there's something in the way of like a good analysis, you know? That's like the issue, right? And that's why, you know, when you go get therapy or whatever, you know, if you're not feeling that good, that's why so often, like, they call them coping mechanisms, and that term is like so now, because whenever we hear the word cope, we think of like the soy jack. But coping mechanism means like, well, how do I deal with this pain, you know? Now, we have coping mechanisms for physical pain because that shit's easy, right? If you have something like painful and then you smack yourself really hard with it, people instinctively develop like a million ways of like dealing with that. You know what I mean? Some obvious ones are like, I'm going to lie down for a little bit. That wasn't a hard smack. Yeah, I'm not trying to hurt myself. I'm making a point. You know, I might lie down for a little bit. Like, you know, I maybe like a drink, or I'm going to smoke some weed, like, or take some Tylenol or whatever. Or I'm going to focus on something else. I'm going to go on a walk. Like, right? There are like a million ways that you can deal with physical discomfort. Hey, who here has a preferred go-to method of dealing with a headache? What I do one of two things. I either dim the lights, lay in my chair, like with the tilted back, you know, and I just sit and I just watch some like nice calm videos, like YouTube Let's Play or something, and I just chill out for that, you know? That's what I do. Sometimes I lie down and have my arm over my head, you know? And these methods don't always work at getting rid of my headache. They work better than nothing, you know. They're preferable to doing nothing at all. The problem is that because these are like physical things, you know, it's all very external, and your brain isn't like being compromised in its ability to understand, right? When you have a headache or a tummy ache, God forbid, your brain, because it's not really affected by this, can go, ah, well, I'm not going to have a headache forever. I'm not going to have a tummy ache forever. There are things that I can do to make the head and or tummy ache less painful or to lessen its duration. But when the affliction is of the brain, it's a lot more difficult to do that. You know what I mean? If you're feeling depressive, you will not necessarily feel that way forever. And there are things that you can do to make it feel better and not last as long. But now the injury is to the system that you're using to decide how to deal with the injury. Does everyone understand what I'm getting at here? Okay? I want to be clear about this because there are a lot of depressive people out there these days, and I swear, it's so cliche, but it's true. You want to feel a bit better about stuff? Make little goals for yourself and then try to accomplish those. Clean up a little bit of the house, go on a little walk, you know, that kind of stuff. Try to get some reliable sleep and make sure that you're getting somewhere in the ballpark of the right number of calories. Stay hydrated, dipshit. It's actually really important. People don't realize how much of this is affected by the rest of you, you know? It's why people get hungry when people get angry when they're hungry. You know what I mean? Like people can get real grumpy, like off of nothing, you know? And that's just, you know, we're a holistic machine. And your brain gets fed all the stuff you eat, and the stuff you do has an effect in it, and all the vitamins and vitamin D and blah, blah, blah. I just want you all to keep that in mind. It's not easy. Okay. So with all that being said, this is like my mandatory, you know, self-help vitamin D. Oh, we're making dick jokes, huh? Okay, that's fine. I'll give you something a little bit more particular. Hey, you want to deal with your depression? Stop hyperfixating on making friends online or getting the attention of people whose names you don't even know, okay? You are not going to feel less depressive the next time you post a cute pic or flirt someone on Twitter and you get affirmation from people who you don't know and will never directly talk to, okay? Group anonymous affirmation will never cure anyone's depression. It does not work. It can be good for some stuff. Obviously, I'm a public figure. But it will not make you feel less depressive. Trust me, as somebody who gets more views, I imagine, than any of you on the content that I produce, okay? It's about simple stuff. It's keeping the little Zen garden in your mind well tended to, okay? So if you really want people's attention, go outside and make some friends in real life. I bet a lot of you don't even have an IRL friend. A lot of you have internet friends. You live with your parents. You kind of get along with your parents, maybe, or maybe you don't, but they're certainly not your friends. All your IRL friends, like, moved away, or you kind of lost track of them, and now it's like, oh, well, these people online are so cool, though. Hey, there are cool people in real life, too, okay? It'll make you feel better if you can talk to someone face-to-face. I swear to you it will. You can keep your online friends too. Just saying, you gotta go out, go to a local thing, go to an event, go type in your city events and then like individual dates in the coming days, you know? You will see like, oh, here's a little art thing, here's a little show, here's a little la-di-da. Sometimes you can do this shit for free. It's very important that you do this stuff because humans are basically biologically meant to, okay? So just, yeah, all right. That was the mandatory bit there, okay? So with all of this being said, do people have the right to die if they want to? Yes. However, I do think that they should be like bonked out of it. You know what I mean? But sometimes, in an incredibly slim minority of times, you might have someone for whom there's a solid case to be made. People with severe physical or mental debilitation. And I want to be clear, by this I mean like Alzheimer's and the brain is rotting and they're not even themselves most of the time. Or like they've got debilitating cancer and they live in extreme pain 24/7. Like, there are cases, you know? Obviously, this is all very sad. I do want to be clear, though, that a lot of the sadness here has less to do with people choosing to die and more to do with our understanding of the feelings that go into suicide. Let me put it this way. Imagine we're 1,000 years ago. Would you feel as bad about some older Viking relative who wants to keep getting into battles because he thinks that it's like he's getting old and he wants to like die, like in battle, you know? It's like, oh, I'm 56, I have like 17 grandchildren, you know, like my time's up, I'm really old, I'm going to be too debilitated to do anything useful soon, like I'm going to go like die on my own terms. We probably wouldn't feel as bad about that conceptually as we do here today. Part of that's because we don't really assign meaning to death the way we have, like, religiously and spiritually in the past. And a lot of that's also, like, the aesthetic, right? Personally, I think a huge part of it is the fact that this is, like, dying in a little, like, hotel bed, you know? I don't know. Hospital. One of the reasons people don't like this stuff is because it's, like, hospital bed, like, you know, hospitals are places where people kind of go to die, you know? And that can be a little bit kind of distressing on its own conceptually. I don't feel positive about any of this stuff. However, why am I talking about all this? Well, part of it is to shame you guys for being annoying on Twitter, okay? But there's something else, all right? I worry a little bit about people getting a little bit too blasé about the right to die. I worry about a world where it becomes popular and uncontroversial to the point where like, oh yeah, your life didn't work out because we have like extremely strong reified class divides and you just ended up being on the shit side of the highway, you know? Oh well, you know, you could always get like the Futurama suicide booth basically. I don't have an issue with people's right to die. I have an issue with society thinking like, oh well, what do people who are the losers in the big social game supposed to do? Oh, well, they could just kill themselves, right? Does that make any sense? I'm not worried about the right existing at all. I'm worried about people getting kind of complacent with a like, oh, well, there is something you can do if life isn't working out for you, you know? You get me? That's what I worry about. Has anyone read the Yellow King? It's the like early 20th century like Lovecraftian kind of where they set up a suicide booth in every major American city, like a big marble suicide booth where people will just disappear into sometimes. The King in Yellow, not the Yellow King. Sorry, the King in Yellow. Yeah, it is good. It is good. Yeah, sorry, King in Yellow, not Yellow King. My bad. Just I just don't want people to be too. I don't want it to be easy. The ways we deal with mental health as it is are already pretty. You know, I don't want. Can you imagine if somebody had a mental health episode, got picked up by the cops, got brought to the hospital, and the doctor's talking with them for like the 3 minutes they get, and the person's like, yeah, I just feel like shit all the time. And the doctor's like, well, you know, we do have like a pretty affordable like suicide booth if you want to use that, shrugs. You know what I mean? Like, I want this option to exist, but I don't want it to be on the table. I want it to be as far off the table as is possible. Like, I want it to be, but that's not how it goes. No, that is not how it goes right now. I'm not describing something that exists in the real world right now. I'm talking about my concerns with the, you know, possible direction late-stage capitalism might take this ethical right. Physicians in Canada are not allowed to suggest MAID. It's a criminal offense. Yes, I am happy to hear that right now, physicians in Canada can't literally say, "Have you considered dying?" That's not good. Right now, it's a whole application process. I mean, we talked about that here. It said right here, like that he's already started the paperwork. You know, I'm only saying, like, the problem that I have is that depressive people tend to assign an illegitimate degree of finality to depression. And I want to make it abundantly clear to everyone who watches me that in the overwhelming majority of cases, like unfathomably majority of cases, you know, you should live. You should live. There's value in that. There are things you can do to enjoy life, you know? I want to really hit on this because, you know, it's not something you can just rationally like snap assess. I'll give you an example, okay? I'll tell you, okay? Now, top secret, I've got bipolar. That means manic and depressive. How much do I struggle with this? Not that much anymore because I take lithium. It's actually super useful. Thank you. But before I took lithium, it was an issue. Vaush, isn't this like the anti-trans surgery arguments? No. Unnecessary medical gatekeeping behind getting bottom surgery is not the same as you should seriously wait before wanting to kill yourself. I promise you, those are not in the same ballpark. But, you know, I used to be more depressive than I am now. In fact, I think some of you might remember in my earlier streams, I mean 2.5 years ago, there were a couple of times where I would start the stream and say, hey, just to let you guys know, I'm feeling depressive. I might be a little low energy. You know, it is what it is. I'll get over it soon. Anyone remember that? I remember doing that a couple of times. That's me. That's me being forthcoming right there. Yeah, just a few times, you know. But I'll tell you an example, okay? This happened just a couple of weeks ago. If you can believe it, just a few weeks ago, all right? So I had the day off. Why did I have the day off? Because I just chose not to stream. Because I was feeling like shit. I didn't feel very good, you know? And I got up late out of bed. I hate getting up late. You should always strive to get up early, you know? Your body wants to follow the sun. It does. No matter who you are, you say you're a night owl, your body wants to follow the sun, you know? With very little variance, people, you want to get up nice and early, you know? But I didn't. I got up at like noon. And I you know, I got breakfast and coffee. I showered. It was such a pain to shower. Such a pain, you know? Oh my God, it's so much effort. And I sat down here and I realized I did not want to do anything. I didn't want to do work, but I was feeling anxious about work that needed to be done. I didn't want to play games. And for a split second, you know, I thought, I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but I hope you'll sympathize with me. For a split second, I thought, you know, I don't want to play games. That's it. I like games. I really liked games, but it's done now. That's it. That avenue of enjoyment in life is done to me. That whole medium, that passion that I have, it's gone. Of course, later that day I felt fine. I just had a little bit of grump that morning. It was irrational. But you know what I told myself? When I had that feeling, when I had that, and that's a depressive thought, it's called anhedonia. It means it's an inability to feel joy or pleasure. Like anhedonia and sadness are different. Sadness is an emotive feeling. What depressive people tend to experience is anhedonia. Sadness doesn't always make you want to die, you know? You can be sad and feel like invigorated by it. In fact, I often feel that way. Sometimes sadness can like be a motivating, at the very least like an invigorating experience. Anhedonia is absolutely not. Anhedonia is just like, there's just nothing that it's just, you know, smoothed flat. Yeah, of course, STL. But what I told myself when I had that feeling is like, I'm being a dumbass right now, you know? Like, I don't want to play games right now. I might in like an hour, you know? Let's just do something else. So I did some chores. By the way, doing chores helps me out when I feel kind of down. Because it's like, you know, there's like a satisfaction in accomplishing some like minor thing that you can now reflect on like in a physical, immediate sense. Like, oh, well, there was a mess and now there's not. Like that's a change that was made. And I now get to live in the world where that change happened, right? You know, and then later I felt fine. But just keep that in mind, okay? Because if you could somehow like, if I wasn't familiar enough with what depressive thoughts felt like, that first thought that I had, that, oh, well, games are done for me, I can't have fun with them anymore, those were thoughts that I used to have and not challenge. I used to have thoughts like that, and I would just think that way until the depression was over. And that would exacerbate the length of any depressive episode because the whole time I'm thinking, like, wow, I can't believe it's over. Wow, I can't believe it's over. Wow. And that would, like, reaffirm it, and it would compound it, and it would make it more difficult to, like, get over that. And it's like, oh, wait, it's not over. Actually, I love living, you know? So just keep that in mind. You ever have depressive feelings? You ever have any suicidal thoughts? Just remember, there's like 99.99% of the time, there's stuff you can do. You know, your brain is stupid. It's fine. It happens to the best of us. It's okay. You know, just, you all get me, right? Try to be responsible with this stuff because I know a lot of people are sad about the way the world is right now. I want to indicate that the general, like, positive attitude that I have towards this kind of thing is why I don't consider any of my stark descriptions of potential fascist futures to be like doomer or whatever. Because I think you can carve out a very positive and meaningful life, even in the worst circumstances, right? In fact, mental wellness is often not at all concurrent with material wellness, which is one of the reasons why depression is most common in upper middle class white suburbs and, like, much less common in, like, the ghetto with black families who are in every material sense relatively disadvantaged, at least on average, compared to the aforementioned group, you know? A lot of that has to do with they have, like, family units to socialize with and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mean there's not a problem in those communities, but, you know, there's stuff that can be done. Oftentimes, it really is about, like, having friends around who you can talk to, you know? That's a big part. Communal, you know, communal participation? Belongingness? Something. It's good. It's important. It's important. Support system? Yeah, that helps. Isn't that largely attributable to an inability to get a diagnosis? The same results have borne out even in studies that just ask basic questions about, you know, depressive symptoms or tendencies. But that is absolutely a confounding variable. You know, you can do the same if you go and check out, like, not to pull out, like, a, you know, examples here, but there are plenty of very poor parts of the world where depression rates in observed and diagnosed states are quite low. You know, it's complicated. It's complicated. Yeah, just, that's it. What were we talking about? Oh, what was it? Oh yeah, Canada. Don't kill yourself. Don't do it. Canada, Canada. Stay strong. I forget what this was about. I believe in you. Stay strong, Canada. Yes, SDL. Suicidality also varies massively culturally. Read from White Name. What am I reading? They'll pressure the poor and disabled into killing themselves. They probably already do. The maids system? Apparently some people are being pushed into this in Canada. I've heard some conservative coverage of this maid program that that suggests that it's like this inhumane, you know, like devilish thing. I don't really know the specifics. I can do a more, like, deep dive legally. I was more interested in using this as a springboard to talk about, like, depression broadly and the ways in which there's a threat of, like, you know, an over normalization of this becoming a kind of, like, supplement for economic inequality and medical system failure. Vaush, the examples of people being pushed into MAID were mostly people completely failed by the welfare system. Well, that's what I'm concerned about. I don't want like every person who slips through the gaps of society should be a permanent, like, failure state for the country that you live in, not somebody to be disposed of, right? Like, we may have thousands of homeless people in Los Angeles, and that is a failure of America and Los Angeles and California, but I would not want it to be like, oh, well, we could always, you know, get rid of that. And then it's like, oh, the city of LA actually has no homeless people anymore. Where'd they all go? Well, you know, we took care of the people who fell between the gaps. That's my concern. We'll see how it plays out exactly. Yo, Cure for Poverty just dropped. Shu tweeted this. Let's take a look at a Shu tweet and see how we feel about it.
To dying. Amir Farsood has applied for medically assisted dying, known as MAID. He lives in constant agony due to a back injury, but has started the process for end of life because his rooming house is up for sale and he can't find anywhere else to live that he can afford.
So this would be exactly what I am talking about. Like, there might be other ways to make this man's life worthwhile.
He barely survives on Ontario disability support payments, which are just over $1,200 a month. He doesn't want to die, but being homeless is not an option.
Okay, yeah. See, all right, yeah, okay, all right, okay, yeah, all right. This is exactly what the I am talking about. Okay, this is precisely, exactly what I am talking about right here. This, right here.
I know in my present health condition I wouldn't survive it anyway.
Farsood meets the criteria for MAID: physical suffering due to disability that cannot be relieved.
Not without like medical care, right? Like medical care. By the way, the only reason he's considering this is because he wouldn't be able to survive as a homeless person with this injury. He needs to be able to live like in a house, like a human, like what a human deserves.
His doctor, who knows Farsood's real reason for MAID is his fear of being homeless, signed off on the application in August. Farsood needs a second to do the same. There's a 90-day waiting period. He believes he could potentially access MAID in about a month.
I don't.
Ah, yes, here. I think I saw people talking about this. The Bill C7 cost analysis breakdown, where they're talking about how, like, actually, it could be way more cost effective if some people just killed themselves instead of us having them burden the medical system. Net financial impact of providing MAID, that means suicide, under the current legislation 2021. Gross reduction healthcare costs, mean end-of-life costs, adjustment for palliative care, total gross reduction in costs, $109 million, versus the cost of administering state suicide. Total cost benefit, and keep in mind the like cost reduction they're factoring in here is mean end-of-life costs, or like, hey, regardless of whether or not you want to die, like maybe it's time to, you know? Like, this isn't about whether they want to. It's just like, oh, well, you know, if they simply weren't alive. Some interesting context is that it'll take longer to get trans healthcare than it does a MAID deployment. Nice. That's what I like to call cool. That's a nonpartisan budgetary org. It's not advocating one way or another. I mean, you're kind of implicitly advocating when you open with a chart saying we could save 100 million a year if we just killed all these people. That's kind of an implicit. Trachtenberg and Mons presented 4 scenarios where MAID deaths represented 1, 2, 3, and 4% of all deaths. 4% of all deaths in Canada being from the state suicide program? It's a big backlog. Great. Yeah, probably, the rate over time will go down. Well, no, this was just the study estimating a percentage of deaths as that. It wasn't like relative. It wasn't a product of any like specific demand. It was like a presumption in order to chart estimated costs. Woman with disabilities nears medically assisted death after futile bid for affordable housing. Cool. A 31-year-old Toronto woman who used a wheelchair is nearing final approval for a medically assisted death request after a fruitless bid to secure an affordable apartment that doesn't worsen her chronic illnesses. The looming approval for death makes her grateful. Relieved and elated, Denise said in an interview with CTV News. I was scared they weren't going to say yes. Another example? Jesus. A BC woman is speaking out about her experience accessing death care with more ease than healthcare at a time when federal policymakers are considering further expanding access to medical assistance in dying. Another? No, I think we've seen quite enough. Thank you.
Wish to be dead. Even with the pain, even with the meds. I still want to be here.
I hate that this is a case against informed consent healthcare. I mean, it's a case. I guess one way of thinking about this would be that, like, we might just be seeing an institutionalization of suicide trends that were already present. Like, the people who are now signing up for medically assisted death a lot of them would have probably made efforts to kill themselves outside of the legitimacy of the, like, state-backed medical program. So if anything, it just kind of feels like a co-opting or like an institutional legitimization of that. You know what I mean? It's like, well, the system has failed many people, and some of them killed themselves. But now, like, the government is finally stepping in to do its due diligence. Now, the government will help you kill yourselves. Thank you, government. That is exactly what we needed. Yeah, but now it's legitimized, which leads to normalization, though. Isn't that worse? Yes, I think it's worse, yeah. Yeah. Nobody yeah, this is all social murder. Like people killing themselves because like society has failed to the point where they can't get like proper medical care or proper housing. That's social murder. It's murder through like social systems. It's sort of decentralized murder. And by the government like taking the role of the administrator of that suicide, they're essentially now like the government's basically like getting in on the whole process. Like the government, through its ineptitude, caused you to want to kill yourself, and now the government, through its supervision, will watch you do it, right? Whereas before, your suicide was something at least that was sort of done out the eye of the state. Now the state's getting in on that too. Yeah, it's quite grim. Yeah, it's not good. Good news for the previous story of the Iranian guy, Amir Fasood, who applied for aid. The Iranian community raised 50,000 for him so he can relocate. Oh, nice. Oh, well, that's quite nice. My man over here got 60,000 Canadian dollars just from a month ago, it looks like. Ah, yes, GoFundMe, the West's greatest medical insurance company. Wonderful. Don't twist this into feel good. Trust me, this is not feel good. It is better than him just dying, though.